I'm sorry. Good evening, members. Prayers this evening will be said by the Reverend Lindsay Llewellyn Macduff, the new Vicar of All Saints, with St Philip Maidstone and St Stephen's Toggle. Please be seated. I do apologise. Please stay standing.
I shan't keep you standing long. Let's take a moment just to still our minds and hearts, to put down the busyness of our own lives, and to turn our attention to this room and these matters. Gracious God, I thank you for all those who give their lives and skills to the good of this place. And in particular, I thank you for these councillors as they spend their time on the people of Maidstone. Bless them in their counsels, Lord, and grant them your wisdom, that in their deliberations and decisions they may serve your glory and the common good. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated, members. Before we commence proceedings, may I take this opportunity to advise you that the fire alarm, if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. These proceedings will be webcast and recorded by the council, but will anyone else be recording or filming them? I ask so that people at the meeting are aware that this will be happening. Councillor Dodd. Okay. Councillor Cleater. Thank you, members. Item 2, I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Cannon, Coates, Houlihan, Cadker, Springett, Wilby, Rodwell and Jay Wilkinson. Are there any other apologies for absence? Councillor Cleater. Oh. Thank you. Other apologies?
Councillor Forecast will be with us. He'll just be a tiny bit late. He's on the train. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, members. Agenda item 3. Are there any applications for dispensations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are none.
Thank you. Agenda item 4. Are there any disclosures of interest by members? No. Are there any disclosures by officers?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Agenda item 5. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? Okay, Councillor.
Item 13.
Councillor.
Item 13.
Sorry.
Could you ask Councillor Trubinski to say?
Oh, Councillor Trubinski, could you say the item number?
Item 13. Yeah.
Thank you. Agenda item 6. Is it agreed that the items on the agenda be taken in? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Dawes.
Mr. Mayor, we seem to have struggled to hear down this end of the room. I wonder whether something can be done about the hi-fi system?
Is there anything that can be done? Okay, members, I'll try to raise my voice, but we've tried to reduce the background noise. Can everybody hear me at this stage? Okay. Yes, okay. Agenda item 6. Is it agreed that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed? Thank you, members. Agenda item 7. Are the minutes of the annual meeting of the Borough Council held on the 16th of May 2026 agreed as a correct record? Thank you, members. Item 8, Mayor's announcements. I'll try to be brief this evening. I would say that the most recent event that I attended was actually at the Twinning Committee in Beauvais. We went across for the weekend, and I will say that the people in Beauvais and the mayor treated us remarkably well. It was a 65th anniversary. They treated us to a concert which was a world-class concert. They prepared a banner to commemorate the 65 years of twinning with Maidstone. As part of it, Beauvais have actually taken on a new twinning with an Australian town called Unley. And the mayor of Unley and myself jointly laid a wreath at the War Graves cemetery within Beauvais. So it was quite a humbling event. But overall, I would say that we had a very good reception from the people of Beauvais. There is an event there that some may know, which is called the Jean Hachette event. It's about a point in history in the 1400s. They actually gave me a book which has been published, and I asked for an extra copy for the town hall. So if anyone would like to see that, and if anyone would like to sort of brush up on their French, they're very welcome. That will go in the cabinet. So that was a very friendly gesture. They'll be coming over for the River Festival, so I hope that you'll treat them with grace when they come. Just a few other points. I've been to a number of 5 Acre Wood school events. There are a school within my area for special needs provision. They actually had a charity match at Maidstone United. Then they had an award from Costa Foundation, one of only 2 awards nationally, for a kitchen which they're fitting out in a train carriage at that school it's like a public cafe. Costa offered them £25,000, and they said that we've never given these awards out in England before. It was a national thing, but they saw the proposal and the way that 5 Acre Wood operates, and they said it was one of the best schemes they'd ever seen. So we're very proud that the school in my area got that, and they've just released a record. So if you were to look online in iTunes, it's The Climb, which is I believe it's a Miley Cyrus song. That they've released. So if you want to do some fundraising for 5 Acre Wood, it's 99 pence. Just a couple of other points. I saw a couple of my charities. I went to Hazlitt Theatre to see Square Pegs perform a whodunit that they called Cluedunnit. Square Pegs are a charity that basically they consist of people with special needs, that they work theatrical events around and shows, and they pitch the sort of parts of the plays dependent on the person's abilities. So that it was really lovely to see sort of 25 or so actors and actresses on stage. Those that don't want to be publicly facing help with the setting up and everything. So it was a lovely event, and it was a packed event, and everyone there was thoroughly entertained. And just a couple of days ago, I went to Dandelion Time in Farley. Rachel Rodwell, who's not here this evening, showed me around, and I know that they've moved from a previous site, and I've not been to their current site, but it was really quite fascinating to see that they take in children that have suffered trauma, sexual abuse, abusive parents, and they basically work with them up to the age of 14. They work with children, and they've got various different approaches. For instance, they've got alpacas in one of their fields, and alpacas can get spooked quite easily. So it was explained to me that sometimes children will come in and they're very unruly, and the alpacas will run off. And the children are confused because they really want to go and pet the alpacas, and it's all part of learning that respect and that quietness and the way that you approach animals and even humans can sort of change the way that an animal or a person will respond to you. So it's very uplifting to see that. And there were several other events, but we've got an agenda, so I'll continue at this point. Okay, Councillor Forecast, as you've just come in, do you have any disclosures of lobbying?
I don't, Mr. Mayor, and apologies, colleagues. I was on a train, not only watching the football. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
And if you could keep us updated, Mr. Mayor, on the score, that would be great.
Okay. So agenda item 9. There are no petitions this evening. Agenda item 10. Questions from local residents. I have received notification that Rashmi Kalam wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Cohesion.
Sorry, this is my first time.
No problem.
So my question is to the Council, in light of increasing hate crime, anti-immigrant rhetoric and community tensions nationally, what proactive steps is Maidstone Borough Council taking to strengthen community cohesion, tackle misinformation and ensure all residents feel safe and welcome? And will the Council commit to working with partners to develop a visible community cohesion action plan with measurable outcomes rather than responding reactively to the tension?
Councillor Nagy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your question. This is an important and complex issue, and it is difficult to cover everything properly in a short response this evening. We know there are national concerns about hate crime, high levels of misinformation and community tensions. In Maidstone, we've not seen the same level of unrest as in other areas. However, we recognise there are still risks, and we are working closely with partners to monitor and respond to any issues early. Our Safer Maidstone Partnership brings together Kent Police, Kent County Council, health services, housing providers, community groups and faith organisations. Together, we work to support vulnerable residents, build positive relationships and strengthen community resilience. In recent years, we have brought together community safety partnerships working, resilience, health and community development into one safer, stronger communities teams. We have also worked with national partners and local communities to understand what helps build stronger and connected communities. We recognise that misinformation can cause fear, diversion. While we cannot control wider national debates, we do challenge misinformation locally, share accurate information and encourage respectful decision through our communication and engagement activity. This includes sharing positive stories, holding events, giving grants to community groups to show, strengthen and what unites us as a borough. We have taken a proactive approach to engaging with and understanding our communities. For example, our work with residents on violence against women and girls, the work in Parkwood and Seneca on Pride in Place, and our planned engagement with communities in the town this summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kalam, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Cohesion arising out of your original question or the reply?
Yes, I do have a supplementary question. And can you also confirm whether the Council intends to collect and publish data on community cohesion For example, community engagement, hate incidents, and residents' perception of belonging, so that we can measure whether these actions are genuinely improving trust between communities.
Thank you for that. I'm aware that some of that information is already available via the Safer Maidstone Partnership, and I will talk to officers and how we could take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have received notification that Councillor Geraldine Brown wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Policy and Management. As Councillor Brown is unable to be present at this meeting this evening, I have agreed to ask the question on her behalf. On the 17th of June, the Cabinet resolved to undertake the process of formally withdrawing the Maidstone Gypsy and Traveller and Travelling Show People Development Plan document. It is planned to look at this under the new local plan process instead. As MBC would cease to exist if a unitary authority is installed, that would leave our borough with no examined and approved assessment of need and how to meet it, perhaps for the next 4 to 5 years. Do you believe such a withdrawal would look after the interests of all residents, rather than using your current power and authority rapidly to update Regulation 19, issue it for consultation and submit to examination? Councillor Harwood.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Brown in absentia. I'll try and answer the precise elements within Geraldine's question, because I know there's another question coming along which is slightly different in its nuance, and I won't repeat myself. Essentially, in relation to our current situation, as a result of the work to date on the Gypsy and Traveller and Travelling and Show People Development Plan document, Maidstone Borough Council currently does have an up-to-date assessment of accommodation need, i.e. a Gypsy and Traveller accommodation needs assessment. So we're fully up to date in that for development control and planning management. This accommodation needs assessment has been published and is available on Maidstone's website, so the public can view that assessed need. This remains up to date and is used as the basis for calculating our future Gypsy and Traveller accommodation needs, and it actually contains figures. In terms of how to meet identified needs work on the new local plan, this has already commenced and will include accommodation needs of both the Gypsy and Traveller community alongside that of the settled community, so the work will run in parallel. In the interim, Maidstone Borough Council will continue to operate its Local Plan Review 2024 policies and allocations as relate to Gypsy and Travellers communities and settled community, which will soon be further strengthened by an updated landscape character assessment document. And I think that's a really fundamental point, that we know that coming out of the local plan review, there were concerns about the strength of our countryside protection policies. The landscape character assessment will reintroduce, I think, some of that robustness that we lost in the transition. And I think that will be very significant in relation to future applications in the rural area, including Gypsy and Traveller proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Members, a written version of the answer will be sent to Councillor Brown. I have received notification that Councillor Peter Cooling wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member of Planning, Policy and Management. As Councillor Cooling is unable to be present at the meeting this evening, I have agreed to ask the question on his behalf. The Gypsy Traveller and Travelling Show People Development Plan document is recommended for withdrawal despite the extensive preparations that have gone into it by officers under the leadership of Councillor Harwood. Prior assurances were given that Regulation 19 would be published in June and then examined and, as necessary, amended and approved before MBC might disappear, overtaken by a unitary authority. The reasons given are stated to be technical, that is, the level of fluidity and changing circumstances on sites and the consequent accuracy of pitch capacity figures for existing sites. That fluidity is constant and should be susceptible to professional monitoring and reasonable estimation. This would appear to be a clear case of issue avoidance. Part of your legacy could be to leave this area of your probable future unitary authority with an approved way forward on this important subject for all residents. Why do you not commit to a level of resource, cost and urgency to bring the very advanced Regulation 19 draft up to date and then submit to consultation and examination as a matter of priority? Councillor Harwood.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and again, thank you vicariously to Councillor Cooling. Ensuring effective delivery of the required pipeline of new pitches to meet identified needs within the borough's gypsy and traveller communities is complex and sometimes challenging. This makes the workload associated with ensuring the required detailed and up-to-date evidence base and then putting into place the planning to effectively meet that need significant. Given the scale of the practical concerns aired around the appropriateness of the Planning Inspectorate's standard method approach to identifying site allocations and concerns around identifying the level of needs for affordable pitches within the evolving DPD, it will not be possible to update the DPD and associated evidence base and still undertake a Regulation 19 public consultation, analyse the results and then create the relevant documents in order to meet the government's 2026 cut-off for DPD submissions. And I think that is a fundamental point, that when the local plan review inspector set the timetable for delivery of a DPD to follow up the local plan review, we then did not know that we would have a new government that was going to remove DPDs. And the canon of evidence required to underpin the document and up-to-date evidence in a complex area, it just is not possible to get this over the line in time. And I come back to my earlier answer. However, we can tackle the issues addressed through the new local plan, which is already underway. It's work in progress. So this is not being kicked into the long grass. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. A written version of the answer will be sent to Councillor Cooling also. I've received notification that Councillor Kate Hammond wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning Policy and Management. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you. For clarity, I'm here as a representative of Lenham Parish Council. Our chairman was unable to attend tonight because we've got our full council meeting at Lenham, so he sends his apologies. So on his behalf, regarding Heathlands, the EIA scoping opinion proposed outline application for residential development of up to 5,000 homes, including employment, mixed use and community floor space, public open space, outdoor sports provision and structural planning, schools, new railway station, demolition of existing buildings and associated infrastructure. As this is the largest planning application MBC has ever allocated, is it better for this proposal to be heard at committee and not decided by officer delegation?
Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to Councillor Hammond for the question. I think that given Maidstone Borough Council's interest in the land as a co-promoter of the site, I can confirm that the officer's recommended response will indeed be taken to Planning Committee for determination prior to the issue of the scoping opinion. Thank you.
Can I just confirm I heard you correctly, that this will be taken to the Planning Committee? Okay. I've got nothing further.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
You, Councillor Hammond. Agenda item 11, questions from members. I have received notification that Councillor Nedelcheva wishes, I do apologise, wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning Policy and Management.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask, has a decision been made regarding the £450 Lenham Parish Council seal application for the creation of a nursery? And if not, when might the decision and the allocation of funds be expected? Thank you.
Councillor Harwood.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Nedelcheva for this question. No formal determination of strategic SIL allocations has yet been confirmed. However, the recommendation contained within the SIL Bidding Round 2 allocations report, to be considered by the Planning and Healthier Stronger Communities Policy Advisory Committee next Tuesday, on the 7th of July, does propose that the full £450,000 allocation is made to Lenham Nursery School. A final formal determination of respective SIL allocations will be made at the Cabinet meeting on the 22nd of July. So hopefully by that date we will have certainty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Nedelcheva, would you like to ask a supplementary question to the Cabinet Member for Planning Policy and Management arising out of the original question or the reply?
No, I'm satisfied with the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 12. I call upon the Leader of the Council to submit
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Point of order.
What's your point of order?
Mr. Mayor, I rise on a point of order under the Constitution regarding a profound procedural flaw in the rejections of member questions on under paragraph 3.7. The Chief Executive confirmed to me by email this afternoon that a generic high-level policy question was rejected based entirely on the proper officer's outside background knowledge of a specific file. As the Chief Executive herself noted, a decision can be challenged if it's procedurally flawed or Wednesbury unreasonable. To filter a generic policy inquiry through an internal department bias is a clear procedural flaw. Furthermore, to legally define a separate, active, live situation where a structurally compromised ATCOS frame is leaving a fracturing chrysotile asbestos structure immediately adjacent to a public footpath as resolved and brought to a close is the absolute definition of Wednesbury unreasonableness. Mr. Mayor, an active environmental hazard and the total collapse of planning oversight cannot constitutionally be swept under the carpet to evade...
Councillor Povey, you are raising a question that was rejected prior to this meeting. I'm afraid you're going to have to stop at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Agenda item 12. I call upon the Leader of the Council to submit his report on current issues. Councillor Jeffrey, you may speak for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members, and Tony, well done. I'll take over from here for a bit anyway. Last week's heatwave served as a timely reminder of just how bad the climate crisis is becoming. So I was really pleased yesterday when the One Council event focused on sustainability. This administration is going to continue to do what we can to adapt our borough to the changing climate and to reduce our carbon emissions. And sticking with weather-related events-ish, we have now had 3 large water outages here. South East Water have been clear to us that it is very likely that there are more to come. Hopefully you are all aware that I've written to the Water Minister, Emma Hardy, asking for her intervention, and I can't begin to tell you how many people have emailed me letting me know that of the impact that having no water is having on them, and questioning how new development can be entertained. I haven't had a response from Emma Hardy yet. I think there's some things happening in Westminster that might be happening at the same time. I will chase in the next few weeks. There is also now a new Chief Executive of South East Water, and I've asked for a meeting with him. They really do need to come up with a believable plan. Obviously, people are aware of the situation at Miller Heights. We have offered every displaced family an interview with our housing team to see how we can support them. We continue to meet with Kent Fire and Rescue Service, the managing agents and the government to discuss the issue there. And we have provided advice to 61 families and currently have 23 in temporary accommodation. In a couple of weeks, we should hear about whether we are in West Kent, Mid Kent, or just in Kent. Hopefully the latter won't happen. Well, hopefully the former will happen. Another members' briefing is planned for just after the announcement. We are expecting the structural change order to be laid in December and to receive the Section 24 notice in January. In other news, the local producers market in the town centre has now commenced. It's building ahead of steam. There's an excellent fruit and veg stall, great bread stall, wonderful honey stall, and lots of others. So do pop along and see that. The consultation on Earl Street has opened. As you will remember, we want to turn this into an eat street to support the evening economy in town. And the resident survey is starting, so please share that with your residents. There are loads of events happening across the borough. Some have happened, such as the Big Day Out. Well done, Richard. And obviously I can't say well done, Richard, without saying well done, Dave, for the River Festival, which is coming. You all had an email earlier today from Anne-Marie, so please do share those all those events with your residents. And then finally, as you well know, the VORG work has happened in terms of the consultations and deliberative engagement. The report is coming to committee next week. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Before I call on the other group leaders, I will just mention the One Maidstone event that the leader mentioned there. It was a really enjoyable event, and I think that I know not every member could make it, but if you saw the officers and the faces that went up, those that were nominated, those that actually won the awards, I think around this room we would see lots of nodding. So I really do think that it's great that we get the opportunity to celebrate our officers. There's plenty of others which we all know go the extra mile that may not have received an award, but those that received the award would certainly say that they belong to a team, and they all include their success together. But Miller Heights, South East Water, we've had some really challenging times, and I think the officers have really responded very well indeed. So just thought I would say that, members. I now call upon the other group leaders or their representatives to respond, focusing primarily but not exclusively on the issues raised by the leader. You each may speak for up to 5 minutes. I call upon Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought it was me, but I didn't want to presume. Thank you for that, Leader. Yes, I was at the One Council yesterday, and I think the point that Mayor made about all the staff was just brilliant. And, you know, to see not just the people that got their awards, but all the teams behind the people that got their awards cheering them on, I think that was really good. And it just showed how everybody was interlinked and chatting between all the different tables as well. So, yeah, a good morning. The water outages, yes, I mean, we're experiencing that a lot. I don't know if the new incumbent at number 10 will be able to help us with that. Perhaps he'd like to take some of our housing targets and devolve some water back down to us. The LGR geography, thank you for the informative event that was done the other evening, and yes, it's just a waiting game now mainly, isn't it, for some geography for us, but I'm aware that obviously officers are battling behind the scenes to get a lot of the prep work done in advance of that being given to us, but we would welcome another briefing when we know more. I think, you know, for us it will be after we get that geography. The local producers market, I actually went to that briefly. I was a bit disappointed. I saw the fruit and veg stall, the bread stall wasn't there. There was a couple of like burger vans type things and a stall that had shoes for £10. So not quite what I had in mind, but I must admit that's the only time I've been there, so appreciate it may change week to week. But I think when we put the motion forward initially, Councillor Cannon and I, it was very much about farming, local producers, maybe a craft element to it as well, that kind of a local produce and crafting market. I visited that on my way back from a quick meet-up that we had as the female councillors of this chamber for brunch, which was really nice, and we all got on really well. We had a nice chat. We barely mentioned the council a little bit, quite interested in each other's stories and how we got into that, into our roles. But I think where we're going now as a council, I think we need to shine a light on some of our best practice, because although we obviously do disagree robustly, we also work together collegiately, all different across the chamber. And I think as the light kind of dims on us and starts on a new authority of unitary, we need to shine a light on that best practice going forward. It's not the case in all chambers. What else? Resident survey, yes, it will be good to hear what everybody thinks of everything that's been going on. And finally, you can see tonight that we've all changed sides. Only physically, we're still where we are, politically. I'm not sure why. Perhaps Stuart prefers this more beneficial position for the camera angles. On that kind of, I think that was pretty much everything he said, and obviously from when we started to when we finished, looks like England's in the lead now, so fingers crossed they've won. There you go, new news, they've all won, so well done England. The end from me.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor English, the leader of the Liberal Democrat group.
As the leader said, times have been a little challenging climate-wise, weather-wise, recently. I don't imagine that will improve. However, perhaps the silver lining, if you can look at it like that, is the impressive performance of some of our all of our front-line service teams. It is not, and I know this as the relevant cabinet member, it's not a nice job going round clearing bins in the hottest weather you can imagine. We've had to adjust the times a bit earlier to make it a little more reasonable for the staff. Sadly, one or two members of the public have complained about the earlier start. The great majority, however, have been very, very supportive and understand why that has been necessary. I would say that we are very lucky in Maidstone in the sheer dedication and hard-working quality of our bin operatives, of our street cleaners, our parks keepers, who have been working very hard in challenging circumstances. I would also like to pay tribute as one of the ward councillors for High Street, where Miller Heights is, to the hard work our housing and other officers, including William Cornell, put in dealing with this situation. It's not a new situation that has arisen. I won't go into the details, but it has been in development for some time. And hopefully we won't just resolve the immediate problems, that we will emerge out the other end of this with a better situation in terms of the building and its residents going forward. Can't say more than that because it is all quite complicated and sensitive. On a lighter note, and talking about consultations, we have had the closure of the consultation that went out on the proposed pump track for Willington Street. We have had a significant response to that. And as my last conversation with the director, we were looking at 85% approval support, so that is most pleasant to report. There are a lot of things that are unwinding in environmental services, the park side of things, and across the council as a whole in the next few months. So hopefully we will leave as a borough council, district council, a physical legacy whenever unitarisation happens. I'm just hoping that it does happen on schedule and that the worst of all possible worlds doesn't happen and we end up with a Sussex situation where we're all in limbo for an extra year because the government doesn't like any of the schemes. So I just hope that we do get a clear decision and we can all move on with whatever situation we've got. But we won't know that until later this month, but hopefully at least the announcement goes to schedule and we are a lot clearer on what we are doing as a council and a district. I won't say any more than that except to say I also believe that we share more amongst us as councillors than divides us on our political lines, and however we go forward into the new unitary future, I hope that element of the culture of Maidstone, which has generally been open, friendly across parties, with people going off to the pub together and so forth, continues, and that in whatever brave new dawn we face, we don't retreat into party political silos and trenches, and that in our remaining time together, we may differ, we may hold strong opinions on particular issues, but that we hold those opinions with grace and understanding that people disagreeing with us does not make those people evil. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor English. I call upon Councillor Cleater, the leader of the Labour Party.
Thanks for the promotion, Mr. Mayor. I hope they realise it's me.
Oh, here we go. Well, we can only hope.
Easy mistake to make, I know. So just a couple of things. Totally concur on the water outages. So if South East Water can fix that big leak that's been rolling down Bluebell Hill for the last week, that would be useful. And then maybe, just maybe, we'll get rid of the hose pipe ban that they've introduced. I will push Emma Hardy to respond. And just for information, the new leader of the Labour Party, not me, works in the opposite office to us at Portcullis House. I thought we've already lent him a fan for the cool down in the hot weather there, so it's all good. I do concur about the new market. I was hoping to see more farm stalls on that, but we are where we are. It's a start. And to be honest, food stalls aren't what we need in terms of hot food, because there's plenty of wonderful independent restaurants in this area that people can go to. So if we can encourage more farmers or craft, that would be really great as well. I just wanted to add my thanks to the staff for the One Maidstone event. It was really wonderful to see them all. So happy to be there. Anyone would to get a day out the office, let's be honest, but it highlights the hard work that people do, and some of those people who have to deal with very angry front-facing customers do take a lot of grief that they're not responsible for, and in their case there's usually at a level that you can't do anything about. And I absolutely agree, Councillor English, because I ran out with bottled water for our bin men because they'd run out and it was absolutely baking. And people forget that the safety equipment they wear, whether it's our bin men, police, ambulance, usually weighs a ton and is like working in a sauna. And the fact that only a few places were delayed is a credit to them. And I think we all owe them a thanks. England have just won So hopefully everyone's going home from the pub happy. But this links in, and Claudine made reference to the wonderful meeting the women cross-party had. But the fact is, and it is a fact, that domestic violence proportionately goes up when there's men's football on. And I think we need to be careful. We need to make sure that we plan, and we need to hold the perpetrators accountable. It isn't football telling England to win. No, it's the perpetrators who are responsible and no one else. So I think that as well. And I welcome the question on community cohesion, because I think in local government and national government, we're all very good at making policies that sit on a shelf. Actually, what people would rather have is a practical working document. We've already heard of the horrendous attack on a Nepalese couple in Aldershot, a former soldier who served this company faithfully. And I think we have to be mindful when we speak of not pushing a narrative, no matter where we're from, that then triggers a hateful reaction. As we say, we all disagree on policy sometimes. We may agree on policy and disagree how to get there. But at the end of the day, I think Nathan's got a proud tradition of working together and actually trying to achieve something. Nothing points that out more than the 1,000 council homes started under the previous administration, carried on under the present administration, and supported cross-party. There's a difference between saying we don't want too many houses, but the fact is people have to live somewhere, and the houses we need are not very expensive 5-bedroom detached. They are houses for people who live and work in this community, and whether you like it or not, there is a shortage of them. So I think that's what we concentrate on. And if I hear Lewisham one more time, I know I say this every meeting, but again, it's on social media, then please feel free to email Lewisham and complain, because we've told you that's not the case and you don't believe us. So feel free, to our thousands of listeners, email Lewisham yourself and they'll tell you the Shetway hasn't got Lewisham homes being built on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleater. Just to pick up on the point about the one Maidstone, I was giving the awards, and in actual fact, you notice that obviously to celebrate the people receiving awards, there'll be a photograph, and it brings it home when you get to a point where no photograph is being taken because the officer that's receiving a reward would be at harm's risk if he or she were to be photographed, and it just brings it home that these people are being rewarded, but they have to be very careful about their identity because of the dangerous situations that they could be put into. So we should applaud them for their work. Thank you. I call upon Councillor Harper, the leader of the Independent and Fant and Oakwood Group.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd start off with picking up on the points Maureen talked about. It's good to hear the new likely Prime Minister giving a commitment to building more council houses, because we've all seen over the last 20 or more years the erosion of public sector housing and the impact it's had. And perhaps we may find that we get more guidance in terms of all these local plan numbers going ahead. If they were all to be council housing, I think there'd probably be more support for building in the borough. But we know that's unlikely to be the situation. But we need to do everything we can do to continue our council housing programme, to push it as far as we can do in our time left. Picking up about the heat wave, which the leader started with, and the climate crisis, one aspect of it, fairly sort of a small one, but it's one which perhaps as a council we could think about, is that a lot of our parks and open spaces actually don't have water supplies. So where the community come and undertake tree planting in the autumn, we've found for the second year running that 3 or 4 months down the road, virtually every tree which the community planted has died because there's no water in the parks. I'm thinking in particular of some of the local parks in my area, such as Gatland Park, I suspect we will have to plant another 2,000 trees or saplings next year to make up for all the ones which have died through the current drought. If we had a water supply, and I don't know how much it would cost, for instance, those plants could be watered during some of the bad periods. And so each of the 2,000 trees planted each year would gradually accumulate rather than just replacing ones which always die. Well, that makes us also have to think about tree planting and planting generally. With a warming climate, their traditional plants perhaps are not going to be suitable. So we do need to give thought as to the types of planting which we need for a warmer climate, especially when I think on the news last week they were talking about in about 30 years' time, 45 degrees will be a fairly typical temperature in this country in the summer, where our types of trees we have now, not many of those would survive in that level of heat. So we do need to perhaps give consideration as part of our biodiversity strategy to the impacts of that. Local government reorganisation, yeah, hopefully by the end of the month we'll know whether we're heading east or west, north or south or whatever, or potentially nothing. But I would imagine, given that Angela Rayner's advising Andy Burnham on devolution and so on, and she was the architect of local government reorganisation, that the thing will continue on. But that brings me on to how one of the issues that linked to it we perhaps can think about as a council. With the creation of the Maidstone Town Council, all of our borough is now parished. Previously, a large part, obviously, Maidstone wasn't. And I just wonder if perhaps in our remaining time, we can perhaps think about devolution in terms of devolving community assets down to the community. Things such as neighbourhood parks, playgrounds, amenity grasslands, and things like that. Things which are very local and are far better off being managed by the communities they are in, rather than a unitary authority which could be in Tunbridge or it could be in Ashford, and are really not going to be massively interested, except perhaps on an esoteric scale, as to the future of some of our local parks and facilities around the borough. So I'd ask for perhaps us to look at that over the next month or two. And yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. I call on Councillor Povey on behalf of the leader of the Reform UK group.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, pleased to see the leader's efforts, his continued fight against the effects of water shortages. We've all been affected by that, and I'm sure all our residents are as well. It's an ongoing fight, but I would remind him it's not just fresh water, but also sewage. I did mention at the last meeting that there were problems in Harwich and that we'd had sewage being shipped from Harwich to Ashford. I have since received a reply from Southern Water about that issue. I'm not satisfied with it. I'm not convinced that they're set up to meet our excessive housing programme for this borough. I'm quite happy to give you a copy of that reply, but I think it's something that you do need to take on board as well as just the water supply issues. On the subject of housing, we heard from Steve Reed, the Minister for Housing last week, who was saying no homes without water. I think it's a great philosophy, and I think a lot of people here would agree with it. But I would ask the leader what NBC can do to help ensure that this philosophy turns into a clear commitment supported by a viable plan. It's nice standing on an interview saying these things, but what are the government going to do to make that happen? And what can we do as a local authority to help that happen and hold them to account? I would suggest that talking to Tunbridge and Malling, KCC, and maybe other local councils or other councils might be a good starting point. I'm not suggesting you don't. On the Heathlands Environment Impact Assessment, we heard from Councillor Hammond earlier. I'm pleased to hear the result. It's a big, complex, I think it's about 500-page document. I've looked at it, and I think holding that to public scrutiny is a very important part of the process, and anything we can do to help that happen, I think, is true. On the subject of racial tensions, if I may, we did have a question on it tonight. It is a big problem, and I know one of our colleagues along here said, I'd like to hear Reform's point of view on that. My reform is it's an abhorrent, my view is that it's an abhorrent crime. A genuine racial hatred should be really stamped out. However, holding views that immigration into this country is too high and not well controlled enough needs to be a balanced argument within that, and there's no shame in holding those views. Finally, I urge the leader to meet with me to address an active non-compliance situation in my ward, which has resulted in an active public safety issue. In view of the response to the point of order tonight, I will moderate what I'd like to contribute. I am aware that distorted narratives may have been circulating behind the scenes regarding this matter. As a result, I'm intentionally choosing not to air those details tonight. My absolute priority is resolving this public safety hazard and any planning breaches that might have been the root cause for the village of Harwich, rather than gaining political headlines through a publicly broadcast meeting. Therefore, I'll be writing to you to present the physical evidence and the full audit trail. I trust that you will look past the defensive briefs, grant me the meeting, and help me correct the public record to resolve this matter safely. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Povey, you deviated a little there at the end, but I'll leave you to have your discussion offline. I call upon. I'll now open this item to questions. I now open this item to questions from council members for a period of. I now open this item for questions from council members for a period of 15 minutes. Questions may be on any subject relevant to the role of leader. Councillor Greenan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to ask the leader of the council how we would like to respond to the points that have been raised by the group leaders.
Thank you, Councillor Green.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Green. Just very briefly, Claudine, thank you for your comments on best practice and working to fully agree. And I think this is our happy place, isn't it? You mentioned changing sides for the camera. Well, if I would have had my hair done if that was the case. And thank you, the incoming Prime Minister there, for your comments on community cohesion. I think they are absolutely essential. And the market was mentioned. I think the day you may have visited may have been the far right march, and I think that might be why the bread stall wasn't there. That's my guess. Other than that, assets to Paul. You mentioned assets to parish councils. They need to contact us in terms of anything they want to take on. I think some transfers are underway. And then I think, yes, and Steve, just do send me that letter from Southern Water. Yes, clearly sewage is a massive problem as well. The potable water, the fresh water is kind of top of the agenda at the moment, but we mustn't forget the sewage problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Travinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, on behalf of all of us who recorded the football, I'd like to thank Councillor Cleater for telling us what the result is.
You're welcome.
Okay. Now, I can tell you, Councillor Harper, at 45 degrees, you can grow some really great trees and plants. Really colourful. I've experienced it, all right? But that brings me on to my point, which is to do that, you need lots of water. As you're aware, Headcorn has been one of the worst areas affected. Balcombe Village has very, very low pressure. Some people don't have a shower for 3 or 4 days because the pressure is so bad. And it's not going away. This problem is not going away. So I would like to ask, if in your conversations or your meetings with South East Water, have they at all ever indicated what needs to be done and how long it will take, and how much money and resource it will take, and when it's likely to be finished, so that this water pressure problem and the cuts don't occur anymore? And just lastly, my OCD is really bugging me. That mayor's sign is completely different to the other ones. It's a completely different colour. It's just doing my head in, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Travinsky. Councillor Jeffrey.
Yes, sorry, I'm not going to answer the mayor colour sign. No idea. It just does look a different colour. Just in terms of South East Water, I mean, they have got a published water resource management plan, which came out a couple of years ago. They are talking about fixing more leaks. I've heard some horrendous figures of the amount of water leaking at the moment. They are saying they're putting more effort into that. They're talking about recently bringing online a new treatment plant. I think that's in Aylesford. I still don't have the confidence that it's making a difference. So, and I do mention Oldcombe as Headcorn as well as Cox Heath as being our three big areas of Staplehurst, yeah. Those kind of two patches as being the two bits. I will keep on at them and keep doing everything I can to get it moving.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Also, Lewes village is rather depleted, and we mostly have low pressure in any case. I call upon Councillor Round.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First time you're getting past the mayor, having a go at the new mayor. Right, now then, I'm sorry, I want to go on about South East Water again as well. And it carries on and it carries on. I mean, yes, Ziggy's just been speaking about pressure and the pressure problems of South East Water. It can't get up the hill, it can't put out a fire. That's pretty awful. But meanwhile, at the bottom of the hill, whilst everybody responds to households and habitats, they forget farms. Farms are critical, farms are crucial. The trouble with the end of Headcorn, when you get out towards the aerodrome, is you're on the cusp, and it was mentioned by, thank you, Councillor Povey, because it was a relevant point you made at one point. We need cooperation with the other councils, because when you get to the edge of Headcorn, beyond the aerodrome more or less, you're in a cusp. There's Tunbridge Wells on one side and Ashford on the other. And yet the big pipe that broke was on the A274 outside Headcorn Aerodrome at the start of Headcorn Air Show. What could have been worse? But the trouble is, after Headcorn Air Show, there aren't any houses. It's a flood zone. What it is, it's dairy farming. And farmers who manage the actual locks, sluices and reservoirs of the River Belt and the Sherway and the Hammer Stream and the Crane. Nobody seems to understand the water network that goes with that, but the trouble is, dairy farmers do not keep reservoirs like horticultural farmers do. Farming is not one just ordinary bag. There are lots of different skills, lots of different ways in which farming happens. And dairy farmers need water pressure. They don't have water pressure. They cannot milk their cows. It's a tragic situation. It was a desperate situation, and it continues to be when the heat's so hot, because cows are entitled to hygiene and cleanliness like anybody else. So please note that. But I am pleased to say that the emergency planning officer has consulted me on the subject. But we need to keep on enforcing that it's not just houses and habitats, it's business and farming that are being affected by this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Round. Councillor Dawes? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, just very briefly, thank you, Martin, and my apologies for not mentioning livestock farming in particular. Tony and I went to a workshop, a day-long workshop, a couple of months ago, led by one of their directors, Doug Whitfield. We raised this specific point with every South East Water person we could find, specifically about making sure that the animals have water on those farms. If and when I get the meeting with the new chief exec, I will raise it again.
Thank you, Stuart. Councillor Dawes, do you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, or more of a proposal, if it's a question. Since I've been to the multi-faith event held at KCC, and it was really a success, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've got that burning desire that multi-faith really needs to be much bigger at Barra level, in Mud Park, in open air, for a few days, for really all those different cultures to all mix up with each other. Because the more we see that actually, yes, we might have different religions, yes, we might have different colored skin and different nationality, at the end of the day, we're all the same, we are all human beings. And the more we would be mixing up with one another, and Maidstone facilitating this, being a free event, would really make a good step towards including cohesion in the community. So.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you. There wasn't a question there, but just very briefly, I was at the multi-faith event as well. It was really good. I did meet with Orla Sweeney today, and that was the topic of our discussion. What more can we do? How can we support the interfaith work within Maidstone? And I believe I've got a meeting with the new Vicar of All Saints in a couple of weeks as well. I'm sure that will be on the agenda to discuss.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. As we have a new vicar for All Saints, and we have such a close bond with the church, it seemed appropriate for Lindsay to give the reading today. But I do want to confirm that I am talking to other faiths, and we will be having a multi-faith year as part of our full council. So just to reassure you on that point. Thank you. Any more questions? Oh, Councillor Forecast.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have three very quick questions for the leader, if that's okay. Firstly, and regardless of what you personally think of the policy across the chamber, the leadership of this council is undeniably aware of how many asylum seekers the Home Office has placed and plans to place in the Borough of Maidstone. Will the leader share this information with councillors and confirm where they currently are located? Secondly, what, if any, progress has been made regarding paddle provision in Maidstone? And lastly, what is the latest regarding our 5-year land supply? And the reason I ask is because I've got specific concerns about a planning application on Hermitage Park. About paddle provision and improvements. Paddle. Thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Okay, three questions, I think. In terms of where, first one was where asylum seekers are housed. No, I'm not going to share that. Secondly was around paddle provision. I'll have to get you an answer on that. I don't know off the top of my head. And the third question was? 5 lanes. Tony, do you want to answer that? Because that's more in your head than mine. But yes.
Yeah, I mean, as colleagues are aware, I think we're around kind of 4.72 or something. We don't have a 5-year land supply in the current situation, as do most other local authorities in Kent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillors Jeffrey and Harper and Forecast. Any more questions, members? Okay, so agenda item 13. Mason Gypsy Traveller and Travelling Show People Development Plan Document, Regulation 19, Documents Consultation. I call upon Councillor Peter Titchener, Chairman of Oldcombe Parish Council, who wishes to speak on this item on behalf of Maidstone Calc. Councillor Titchener, you have up to 3 minutes to address the Council.
Mr. Mayor and Councillors, a very good evening to you. I'm speaking on behalf of Maidstone Calc because the Chairman and Vice Chairman cannot be here this evening owing to prior parish commitments. We were alerted to the agenda item after our email was sent on Monday to officers seeking an update on DPD delivery, which had been promised in June. We received no prior communication indicating delay or withdrawal of this important document, including via normal parish liaison channels. This agenda item recommends approval of the Cabinet recommendation to withdraw this DPD. It is planned instead to look at this under the new local plan process. Our borough, in particular some parishes, have witnessed site and pitch developments grossly in excess of that laid out in the October 2017 local plan. The 2024 local plan review then sidesteps the issue by deferring to a DPD. The current local development scheme shows DPD adoption in January 2028, that is before NBC might disappear into a unitary authority. Withdrawing at this time would leave our borough with no examined and approved assessment of need and how to meet it for perhaps the next 4 to 5 years. That cannot be fair to anyone and should be embarrassing for this council. Such a decision by elected councillors can only be interpreted as convenient cover to make this issue somebody else's, while residents elect you to take decisions, not avoid them. We are told that because of constant changes in circumstances and occupancy numbers on G&T sites, pitch capacity figures cannot be calculated accurately enough for the DPD. It cannot have come as a surprise that travellers travel, and therefore the occupancy of pitches is continually changing. We maintain that professional monitoring and professional estimation should be enough to underpin the DPD. The Planning Inspectorate recognises that numbers are fluid and that a level of inaccuracy is built into the planning process for G&T pitch provision. On behalf of Calc Maidstone, we urge you to complete the DPD process with a sense of urgency by updating the Regulation 19 draft and submitting it to consultation and examination by December this year. 5 more months should be ample to achieve data correction, given the efforts of Councillor Harwood and officers to date. Examination, modification and adoption by January 2028 should then be achievable. We ask this Council to refuse to support the Cabinet's withdrawal recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Petitioner. I now call upon Councillor Harwood to move the recommendation of the Cabinet relating to Maidstone Gypsy Traveller and Travelling Show People Development Plan document. The recommendation is on page 5.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very simple one here. For policy neatness, I need to formally move that officers be instructed to undertake the process of formally withdrawing the Maidstone Gypsy Traveller and Travelling Show People Development Plan document. For brevity's sake, I won't go. There was a very full debate at Policy Advisory Committee where the full details of the changes in government planning rules were explained in detail, and the level of evidential underpinning we will need. But I think perhaps most fundamental concern to us is that the standard method which is required by the Planning Inspectorate is not appropriate to those local authority areas such as Maidstone, which have larger gypsy and traveller communities. As I explained in the answers earlier to the very good questions from colleagues at Kent Association of Local Councils, we are not stopping work. We are progressing the work through the local plan. So essentially, as of 31st of December, work on development plan documents must stop. There will be no more DPDs developed. We did not know that. The inspector did not know that in 2024 when he made his determination. But we need to do this right. We need to get the evidence base in place. And I suggest that we also need to work with those other local authorities who have larger gypsy and traveller communities to see if we can work together to create a policy landscape that works for both the gypsy and traveller communities and for the settled communities. Because frankly, the standard method, which essentially just requires us to expand existing sites and consolidate, is not going to work in Maidstone Borough. And you can, people can say no, but we were not knocked down in the rush by additional sites coming forward. And the requirement was to essentially identify virtually all our existing sites, which are mostly in the Marden area, which are mostly in Headcorn and Oldcombe, and not have the flexibility that we had through, I think, 3 stages of consultation on the developing DPD, we were unable to continue with that route. We had to have that consolidation approach into the existing sites. And that is the equivalent of having a local plan for the settled community, which effectively says you can only have development in back gardens of existing houses. It removes the flexibility to that degree. So this decision and the very involved debate of the Policy Advisory Committee is not made lightly. This has come about from a lot of soul searching about what is best for all of our communities, whether they be traveller or gypsy communities or whether they be the settled community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Is the proposal seconded? Councillor English.
I can understand, in fact I share the disappointment of numerous people, including the Kent Association of Local Councils, as to where we are. And if the government had not decided, should I refer to it to the previous government or is it still the current government? I'm not sure. But the government had decided to withdraw DPDs by the 31st of December. This leaves us a very short timeline. If we had proceeded along the lines, and we can all debate the finer print, if we proceeded along the lines that we thought we were proceeding on, we would have had time to get this process, just barely, but we would have had time to get this process over the line. Very, very sadly, we do not have time to get this over the line because the approach the government inspector took in the intervention is fundamentally different. Now, we can argue whether it's right or wrong or not, but it is fundamentally different, and it leaves us with a process problem which we simply cannot resolve in the time available. I wish we could, I really do, but I don't think, well, there's no point trying to achieve the impossible. So very sadly, and because I've been wanting us to have a DPD for quite some considerable time, I see no option but to pull it at this stage. The only good part of this is at least the work that's been done on the needs assessment and everything else is not wasted, and we are at least some way further forward than we would have been if we had not done that.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this is where we're going to disagree. Some of that was true, but by no means all of what was said there. You did the 18B in 2024, the 18C in 2025, between 27th of November 25 and the 1st of January 26. We're 6 months on from that. You had plenty of time to get us to Regulation 19 and adhere to that original timeline, irrespective of what the national government was doing with the national planning policy, irrespective of what they were doing with DPDs, withdrawing them or not. 12th of August 2025 was when you went into the press saying about the council-owned G&T site for £4 million. That has never materialised, never made it into Reg 19, wasn't even talked about. So now here we are in the situation, and I agree with you on this bit, where we're pretty much run up against a wall. But you've done that. You had time. It was tight, but you had it. And this is coming from someone that got a local plan review adopted to an extremely tight timescale, whether you like that review or not. So I think, unfortunately, one of the big things that we do as this authority, the biggest things we do is plan. And so we've failed to plan for this section of the community. This has been royally kicked into the long grass, and I do feel it's a dereliction of our duty here. I will not be supporting the withdrawal of this.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Councillor Round.
Thank you very much. I thank Councillor Harwood for his insight and his pragmatism. I recognise that we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't, and quite frankly we're stuck between the devil and the deep blue sea. It is a very difficult position for us all to be in, but whatever the vote is tonight, I will ask you as the leader in terms of planning, and I will ask the leader of this council to actually write to the new Prime Minister directly that person is in position. Because my community has got a disproportionate high amount of cumulative sites, some of which are an utter mess. Some of them are absolutely dens of iniquity, whilst those that are very good members of society, whilst those that genuinely need an absolute deserving place to live, are actually suffering too. There are in fact 5 different types of gypsy and traveller. Every single one of them is different. And Headcorn and Ulcombe and my neighbouring communities has every one of them. To band them into one group I find completely upsetting, because they themselves are as different as chalk and cheese. They're as different as England, Scotland and Wales. In fact, many of them aren't even from any of those 3 countries. Now, the trouble is that what we need to be doing is recognising some of these issues, which is no fault of anybody in this room, nor in any of our officers. We have a situation where I have been actually saying that the writing is on the wall and has been there for the 12 years I've been elected in this council chamber. What we need to do is make sure that cumulative effect and disproportionate representation in a community has an effect on social cohesion. That needs to be recognised in planning law. We need amendments to the planning law that need to be adjusted, right down to retrospective planning permission and what constitutes a home, particularly if it's on mobile wheels. There are many flaws in the law. They need to be changed. A letter needs to be written to the new Prime Minister as soon as possible. I ask the leader and the planning member to consider that urgent need following whatever vote we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Round. Councillor Travinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The NBC record on successfully refusing gypsy and traveller planning applications is poor, to say the least. Indeed, some would say, actually, that it's totally out of control. Time and resource have been spent on the latest DPD, yet we find it's now stalled. Whilst it might not be perfect, it does contain certain things which would be of benefit to the planning committee right now. I believe it should be carried through, and we'll definitely vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Travinsky. Councillor Povey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will endeavour to stay on topic this time. Yeah, I'm really disappointed to see how this matter's been handled for so long. I'm not quite sure how we got quite into this mess. I do second what Councillor Martin Round has said. I think writing to the Prime Minister is an excellent idea. The question I do have is if the government are to blame, how many other authorities have this problem, and how loudly have they all shouted about the problem that it was going to create when the government set these new policies? We have to recognise that gypsy and travellers have rights, and those rights need to be respected, and that means proper planning to support them. Failing to plan is planning to fail. A lack of a proper plan, I understand, I mean, I wasn't around at the time, we only got elected late last year, but my understanding is that a lack of a proper plan was identified as far back as 2017 and was reiterated in 2022. Feel free to correct me if that's not the case. It was before our time, but the key thing, of course, is to look forward. I understand that we're in a very bad situation, and I understand that you know, there's a suggestion to do it with a local plan review, which I wouldn't say sounds like a totally crazy idea at all. It would seem a sensible idea, but I question whether the impact in resources has been considered, and whether, along with LPR, we can actually deliver what's required and meet the necessary milestones in time. What I would ask over the last, well, since 2017, you know, what priority has been put on this, and how much resource has been spent on our garden community projects that have stopped us from delivering, you know, the necessary environment for our gypsy and traveller community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Povey. Have we any more questions, member? Oh, Councillor Dawson.
I kind of despair with central government because they impose on us a unitary authority. They impose on us a lot of laws that are ancient from the 18th century and they're not updating them. And that's been for years. For over 50 years, they haven't actually updated policies to fit 21st century life. And this is once again another example on how central government is messing us up with us. And frankly, I've had enough of my full of Westminsters, really.
Thank you, Councillor Dawes. Sorry, at the back.
Thank you,
Councillor
Mr. Mayor.
O'Riordan, sorry.
Just briefly, as a member of the Planning Committee, I think we've been struggling to deal with many of the applications in relation to gypsy and traveller applications because we don't have a plan. So I'm saddened to see this coming forward tonight. I think it's very important. I just thought I'd like to make you all aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Riordan. Councillor Cleater.
Yeah, like Councillor Reardon, I'm on the Planning Committee as well, so I feel your pain. But let's be clear here, central government came in and did their job. If we've taken too long to do ours, that's on us. You know, we've been talking about this DPD ever since I first got elected. And I've been elected more than one round. So if we get a bit of clarity here, we had time to do these things and we didn't. So we can blame central government, that's an easy thing. And I would say that whether the Conservatives were in as well or anyone else. But actually, we're 2 years in and we haven't delivered. So I think we need to take some accountability for what we have done and what we haven't done. And that's why we are where we are now, lastminute.com, having to debate this. And I totally agree with Councillor Round that to say that Gypsy, Traveller, Roma are one homogenous group, they are very, very different groups of people with very, very different traditions and very, very different ways of engaging. And we've had some wonderful applications through planning who've engaged with us from the beginning, and those applications have gone through. But we have others, unfortunately, usually one person's name, which I won't name here, who's playing the game. We all know that person's playing the game, but there's nothing we can do about it under old planning law and at the moment under the new stuff that's coming in. So we are where we are, and I think really we just need to vote whether to withdraw this or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleater. Councillor Summersgill.
Thank you. To illustrate the change that's happened with this planning inspectors and central government's planning change, my fellow ward members will recall that under Reg 18C, there's a contest about one site there, one family wished to put something in the field, family for two, occupation for two. When the Reg 19 came out, that has now changed to 12, and that has really stunned the community and caused a lot of emails through. So the sudden change from an occupation by 2 or 3 to 12 as a result of the change in central government instruction is instructive.
Thank you, Councillor Summersgill. Any other questions? Councillor Harper.
Yeah, just to sum up, I mean, as Councillor Round will remember, when we used to be on Planning Committee long ago, we regularly put references in to the relevant committees, screaming out for a development plan document and for a policy platform. I'm afraid I've only really had the ability to influence anything since 2024, and come back to the point that it's not just about the change to the national policy landscape, that there's also some of the issues where it's a bit of a one-size-fits-all system, which is for local authorities who've got a very small gypsy and traveller population, which we cannot make it work locally. We had tried through the early drafts of our document to have the flexibility we need to ensure more of a spread of pitch development going forward, but we essentially were required to follow the pitch intensification route. Because of that, all of the issues you talked about, I mean, we know nearly a quarter of Gypsy and Traveller children face multiple deprivation. In the settled community, it's 2%. We know that the Gypsy and Traveller population life expectancy is 10 to 12 years less than the settled community. There were some real challenges in that community, and when it came to affordable pitch requirements and all of the evidential underpinning we needed to do for that, we just could not get that work together in the time. What I'm hoping, and I really do absolutely agree, that it's not just about getting a coalition of the willing with other local authorities who also have larger Gypsy and Traveller communities. It's also about changing government policy and lobbying effectively to do that. And I think we've got the evidence here locally for how and why we can make that work. You know, all the planning committee members, we see this every few weeks after every few weeks. But we are where we are, and the DPD road has run out. So therefore, we're doing it through the local plan approach, and we do not want to be tied to the standard method. We need the flexibility that works, as I say, for both the travelling community and the settled community. And I believe we can do that because we're already working on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Members, unless there are any other questions, I think we have to move on and take this to the vote. Can I see hands for anyone in favour of the proposal? Sorry, all in favour of the proposal from Councillor Harper? Sorry, I'm sorry. Harwood, sorry, my mistake. Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. All those against? Thank you, members. And abstentions?
Thank you, members. The recommendation is carried. The vote 21 for, 14 against, and with 5 abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 14. I call upon Councillor English to move the recommendation of the Democracy and General Purposes Committee, Maidstone Town Council, Shadow Council arrangements and set up. The recommendations have been circulated separately.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to move the recommendations from the Democracy and General Purposes Committee held on the 29th of June, set out in the urgent update circulated at the meeting, with the following amendment to recommendation 3B, that Councillor Kieran Oliver be elected to represent Baystead and Downswood Ward on the Shadow Town Council. The recommendations from Monday's meeting, as originally set out, are circulated to members. I hope you all have them, and are set out very simply. It's recommended that the set-up and operation of the Shadow Town Council be as set out in Appendix 1 of the report to Democracy and General Purposes Committee, that the Shadow Town Council be given delegated authority to determine its own arrangements with regard to its committee structure, which will be member bodies, and that the Shadow Town Council membership from wards requiring a single member from a multi-member ward shall be as follows. I've already mentioned Bearsted and Downswood, but in addition, Barming Heath and Teeson, Councillor Sweetman, Grove Green and Vinters Park, Councillor Field, and Tovel, Councillor Wilby. And finally, and perhaps most importantly of all, that the budget requirement for the purposes of Regulation 3 of the Local Government Finance New Parishes England Regulations, doesn't that title just roll off your tongue, 2008, be as set out in the order, and that be £780,000. We spent a lot of time on Monday discussing the appropriate level for the budget and the consequent precept for the parish council. I have some experience of that, having been involved in the early days of setting up Tovel Parish Council from a standing start. And it has to be said it was somewhat handicapped by having a precept set by the borough members of the ward at the time of £450 for the entire year, which meant we couldn't employ a parish clerk, couldn't do much of anything. So I had the joy of doing it unpaid as a councillor for a year. So it is a balancing act to get this figure right. I personally feel that it is a balancing act, that it is going to be criticised whatever you do. If you set it too high, then there is a risk of reputational damage and people actually having to contribute money for a service which will not be delivered in years to come. If you set it too low, there is a risk of hamstringing the parish council from a start. The committee took the view at this stage that because of the newness of this parish council, this town council, this very significant body, there was a fundamental democratic principle involved about allowing the new council to set its own priorities and budgets, and that we should not be too prescriptive in how those should be set out. And what should also, however, be borne in mind that should the parish council, once it's set up, be more ambitious than had been anticipated, which I think would be a very good thing, that it will indeed have the opportunity to do that. What is important is it gets a start, but that start is reasonably well accepted by the public, and that whatever we do does not constrain that parish council from setting its own priorities and setting its own budget over a period of years. And going forward, it will be important to get both the resources and the precept increase, if that's what's decided, that is sustainable, rather than lots of jerky increases, or going 5 years without one and then having a massive increase, which can be very controversial. So the committee overall took the view that this was the right starting place at this point. We're not perfect, may or may not have got that right, but that was the collective view of the committee overall. And I recommend the report to council.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Jeffrey, were you seconding? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think the key points that came across in the debate for me was around the democratic aspects of this. As a shadow council, we are going to do some background work to make sure we've got things in place and it's ready to go, but we are not elected to that town council. So it seems absolutely right that people who are elected to that town council should make the decisions on the speed at which they work, the budgets at which they work with. When I took over as leader, as a cabinet, we spent a lot of time working out exactly what our strategy would be, making sure we got ducks lined up. The new town council are going to have to go even deeper into that, because it's not just a new administration, it's a new council. So I think they will have a little bit of lead-in time before they really get going, and if they don't take that leading time, they're going to fall on their face, to be honest. So the spending in year one will be less. I also think it's important to point out that as those in parishes know, you get the local SIL money to spend alongside alongside the rest of your precept. At the moment, borough councillors within the non-parished areas hang on to and we have control of the SIL. Obviously, the new town council will have that money as well, and there's something in excess of 250,000 probably sitting there, likely to be sitting there. Obviously, we don't know what we're going to spend this year, so there is going to be funds around. So I do hope that council will support all 4 recommendations, including the budget of 780. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Right, so Councillor Mackay.
First of all, I would say that I regret not being involved at all in this, and I blame myself, not blaming anybody else for that. I am pleased that it is likely that we will have a town council to look after the urban area of Maidstone. Clearly money is the key, one of the key problems here. Who will finance this building? Will be freehold transferred to the town council? Because if something happens to the roof of this or this building, you could be talking hundreds of thousands of pounds. Are they going to start off with a bank account of 0 and wait for the precept to come in? That seems unrealistic. Don't they get a birthday present? Or a birth present? Anyway, there's lots of things. But first of all, I want to say thank you for those that were involved in it. You're going to get some things right, you're going to get some things wrong, I guess, you know? But broadly speaking, the urban area will get, hopefully, an opportunity to make some decisions of its own and be independent.
Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Chair. I will be moving an amendment to the recommendations, to recommendation 4. I think most councillors here want to see a town council succeed, and councillors who attended our briefing for all councillors last week on the whole suggested that a higher budget be recommended. We were given 4 options presented by the officers to us, and at that briefing the bulk of the people present went for the higher option than this. And the proposed budget, which has been suggested tonight, is only half of the budget which our chief officers recommended to us at Democracy and General Purposes, and is well less than what the National Association of Local Councils, so the sector experts, also recommended. A budget of £1.5 million was recommended as a sensible budget for establishing a town council for somewhere the size of Maidstone. Now recommended that setting a budget too low could lead to significant challenges, and this is in the report, in future years, as it might require a considerable increase in precept in the future. And that's almost inevitable. Councillor Mackay's pointed out the cost of the town hall to run the mayor's office as it is now is over £200,000 a year. We will have to, in year 2, hike up the precept massively from what's proposed. Not only that, but a low budget now could give us problems, as the report says, and we were advised by officers, in recruiting a chief officer to lead this authority. If we advertise based on the fact that the initial budget pretty well just pays for he or her at a desk, they may think, what is the aspiration behind setting up this town council? They may think perhaps this town council is just being set up just so people can discuss planning applications, but actually not run services for the town. And that will impact on the type of person applying for a job. People are not going to travel to a new area and take on a new job if they think the aspirations potentially of those they'll be working for lack ambition. I say the figure in the budget proposed to you tonight for the mayor is £10,000. The actual budget in the budget we approved last council meeting is £200,000. As a minimum, the town council need to employ finance officers and have negotiated.
Your time, Mr.
My
Harper.
amendment is that the first year budget be amended to £1,057,500, the median option as laid out in the report to Democracy Committee. This would be a precept of £37.38 compared to the recommended £27.57 and officer recommendation of £53, a reasonable compromise. I so move.
Is there a second? Councillor Gooch. Do you wish to speak, or would you prefer to reserve your
I'll
right?
reserve my right, but I will wish to speak. I want to hear the debate.
Thank you. So, is there anybody that would like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. Couple of points. The 1.5 million figure in the Democracy Committee's paper, the high figure. I mean, if you tend to ask people how much they'd like to spend, they'd often, most people would go much higher. So I obviously misheard your. You're going for the middle figure then of 1 million. Yeah. Okay. The high figure included 100% reserves. So that felt completely wrong. The mayor figure is included for year one, but only the last month of the mayor's will be transferred, because we won't transfer that until till the beginning of April. So that's why you've got £10 in there, £10,000 in there, because it's a low figure. And in year two, yes, the new councillors who are elected could increase the figures, but that will be their democratic decision. And don't forget, in year two, we'll be in the full flow of the new unitary authority. Council tax equalisation will be kicking in, and if we end up in West Kent, there will be a fall of council tax predicted to be about £55. So people will have a balancing item there. So hence we went for the lower figure to make sure that it has got the ability to run initially and has the ability to make the decisions that it wants to make itself through the democratically elected new town councillors. So I urge people to vote down Councillor Harper's amendment.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh. I beg your pardon, Councillor Cook.
Councillor Gooch, we have some people speaking.
Oh, can't tell me.
Councillor Gooch, I'll come back to you, of course.
I'm more than happy to give way if you want to go first.
Councillor Cook, she'd reserved her right for the end of the discussion, so we'll go ahead with speeches.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to speak originally in favour of the original motion that Clive moved in relation to the agreement that we discussed at detail at the Democracy and GP Committee. And I know Clive tends to get a little bit worried when he and I start to agree on things. I can assure you that Stuart gets even more worried when he and I start to agree on things, including the lack of proper consultation when I listen to him talking at KCC. versus what he says when he's at Maidstone Borough Council. But that's another matter. I think if we are going to have the town council, and I certainly would have preferred to have seen a far better response rate to the consultation in support of that, but we are where we are. And I think it's important, therefore, that we don't impose on the town council levels of ambition that it is for the town council themselves to consider. There is nothing to stop when they are running in terms of seeking to assume the responsibility for the town hall, and the amounts that were put forward in terms of this covered a number of the types of things that it would be reasonable for a town council to take on in the early years. And that was how the minimum amount was arrived at. Then we went to, well, if you want to be a little bit more ambitious, we can move up to a moderate level, and then there was a recommendation based on the earlier group to go for a higher figure of about 1.5 million. Now, Stuart's already pointed out that with SIL, there's another £200,000 going on top of the 700,000. So what you're going to get is over £1 million to start with. That is more than adequate for the town council to establish itself in a sensible, sustainable way. And I think that is the right way for us to go, and I would urge members to reject the amendment, stick with what was discussed and agreed at democracy and general purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Representing an urban ward with some of the super output areas that exhibit some of the highest levels of deprivation, it may not seem a lot of money that we're talking about here, but added on to council tax, which is a set cost, which is significant in the context of the lives of many of my residents, I just do not feel in all conscience that I can stand up and ask for an additional tax on top of they'll already be paying in the transition set-up years of the shadow authority, their Kent County Council and their Maidstone Borough Council council tax, and then the additional cost. We know that with the new unitary, we should, in theory, have a benefit in terms of council tax equalisation, which will bring costs down. And therefore, when we have a democratically elected town council ready to take up the reins to democratically decide what their destiny and their future is, we should have that reduction in overall taxation, which will allow the town council taxation to be added on without having an impact on the lives of those residents. I do not believe that it will set a direction of travel or a precedent in terms of underfunding, because actually in those set-up years other authorities are already looking after assets and so on. It will be in future years where that funding is required. So I think this is just a common sense approach to get us through that transition, and then when we have hopefully a more equalised taxation system, we will then be able to perhaps be more ambitious. But at this point, I mean, we need to think about household bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Councillor Forecaster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just building on some of the points that Councillor Cook made, I think it's even scarier when I'm in near total agreement with Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Harwood, who I think have made good points. I mean, I'm not going to rehash the arguments of the town council. I do believe it's going to conclude in higher taxes with no democratic will from the people it's going to impact. But the lower rate has been deemed sufficient by both supporters of the town council and those who are opposing it, such as Councillor Cook, or who has reservations. And from where I'm looking at this, that's probably about as fair as it's going to get. So I'd urge colleagues to vote against the motion. I certainly won't be supporting giving over £1 million for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forecast. Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, one of the points mentioned was we had an all-councillor briefing and it voted one way. I wish I'd have known, really. I wouldn't have bothered going. That would have saved me a meeting if it were, you know, to give advice to democracy and general purposes. Now, I live in going to be the town council area, and I represent going to be in the town council area. My only concern is one of the points that Councillor Harper made, that is that going to be enough to set it up? Because the one person we're going to need, whether it's called a finance officer, a clerk or whatever, that you've got a competent person who can deliver that big, and will the salary attract that? Because actually as part of LGR there will be a lot of good candidates available, I would say. But yeah, I wish I'd have known earlier, because I wouldn't have gone to the consultation. I'd have saved myself a meeting on a long week. But people will vote how they will. That's up to them. But what I wouldn't want is it set up to fail, because I think that would be equally disastrous as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleater. Councillor Povey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the ward of Harwich, Lenham and North Downs, of course, we have 3 parish councils and a residents association in Wormshill, which we actively participate in their meetings. I think we've fully seen the value that they give to us, not just in terms of us mingling with the local community and seeing how local people think and what their main concerns are, but it also shows people that we're approachable, we're just normal people, and it brings them together as well. So all the local people share all their concerns. So I fully appreciate the value of a parish council. As we move towards LGR, of course, I see a lot of value in that debate, because we're centralising authorities much more, and it's taking accountability away from local communities. So I do appreciate what's being asked for, and I think it's a very valid debate. I do have concerns, though, and one, of course, is the lack of local mandate. Very few people voted for this. It was a very small, and I'm just concerned how many people will see their council tax go up and think we didn't vote for that. So apart from a lack of local mandate, I'd like to see a better definition of the purpose and benefit to the local people. I'm just scared that people will find their council tax go up and start objecting for something that they didn't vote for. I mean, town councils have been formed in lots of other areas, and I've seen them immediately call it a town of sanctuary, which is quite a political move. And I'm concerned over how politically neutral a town council may be. Perhaps someone could alleviate my fears. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Povey. Councillor Perry.
Thank you. Yes, I've been listening to the debate. As most of you know, I'm a strong supporter. I live in a rural area, and we have a very strong parish, and that parish provides, I think, a very good service, which is strongly supported by the residents. I would correct a point that's just been made, that voters didn't vote for this. Basically, voters just didn't vote. I mean, there was a very low percentage, I would agree, but you can't assume from that people were against it either. They just didn't vote, and some of those people could well be in favour of it. They just didn't bother to vote. So I don't really buy that argument. But what I would point out is I think a town council would be of great benefit, and I've always supported it. But it is, and I think Councillor Harper made a number of very powerful points here, it is a transition period, you know, and we're in a new period, and the town council will have a chance to bed in. There will be council tax equalisation. That is a very, very important point. And I think ultimately in the longer term that should be okay. I do support the original proposal. I think I am nervous of going right up straight away, because I think the new council will be in a position in a year or two to make its own budget. and it'll be able to judge it accordingly. So I support the original proposal, and I hope it does go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Do we have any other members wishing to speak? Then I will return to Councillor Gooch as she reserved her right.
Oops. Thank you, Chairman. I wish. Of course, there's no denying the new town councillors, they will decide their own future. I get that. They can set the precept, what they think it should be and what their ambitions or not should be. That goes without saying. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen yet because, first of all, OK, we're going to vote the councillors. There will be councillors there, fine. But there won't be the finance director, there won't be the responsible finance officer, there won't be a town clerk, the chief officer. That's where we must properly set up the new town council. There must be the budget there to attract really good quality people. Then what the councillors do after that, fine, that's totally their decision. To take up Councillor Jeffrey's point, I totally understand when you first came into office, you took your time to decide what your priorities were, how much it was going to cost, and all that jazz. Bear in mind that you had a first-class chief executive and a first-class finance officer to support you through those decisions. But it's true, isn't it? The officers were there, but with a town council, the officers won't be there. We've got to have officers there, up and running, ready to help the new councillors make those decisions. Therefore, setting the budget too low is setting them up to fail. We will not be attracting the quality staff for Maidstone that we are used to. Of course, our staff that we've got cover a much wider, I'm not that daft, it's a whole borough. But you look at other town councils, existing town councils, Faversham, Sevenoaks, Deal, I could go on, different sizes. Their budgets are about 1.5, 2 million, and they've got fewer councillors. So we need to be very careful, and that is why I urge having a higher level to start off with. And that will mean that future years, there won't be huge hikes in precepts. And in fact, they needn't even put up the precept in the second year. So please let's heed the advice of the National Association of Local Councils and give this town council the opportunity to really recruit the decent staff that we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gooch. It's now back to Councillor Harper, who proposed the amendment.
The only thing I would add to what Faye said is to bear in mind that the level of precepts of our current parishes varies from almost £200, with a lot of the average around £80 a year. So, you know, people are already paying that, and already paying that in poorer parts of the borough. Our council tax is what, a couple of grand? I think under £1 a week is not much. I think, we introduced only a while ago various policies to 100% relief on council tax for people who can't afford to pay it. So we've already got good policies in terms of that. Our concern of Faye and mine is that if we haven't got the ability to have the resource, we will not be able to negotiate with Maidstone Council and the Shadow Unitary in terms of, as Malcolm said, the town hall, looking at what we want to do at the mayor. The leader earlier said if parishes want to look at taking on parks and all the rest of it. That requires negotiation. If we have no staff, I do not think the chair of this parish council is going to be able to negotiate with chief executives here and at the Shadow Authority at the same level. If they're not having that level of support provided to them, how are we expecting those sorts of early discussions to have? Because once the unitary has gone beyond year one or two, it's not really going to be that interested in Maidstone Town Council. Let's just face it. It's going to have its own massive problems. So getting the thing to start to succeed is really important. It's easy to fail, but it's difficult to succeed, and you have to resolve things correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. So, members, we are now going to take the vote on the amendment. So this is the amendment, not the original proposal that was tabled. Can I see a show of hands for all of those in favour of the amendment, please? And can I see all of those against? And abstentions, please. So the amendment has clearly fallen. So we'll move back to the substantive, the original proposal, and Councillor Summerskill.
Thank you. I just want to ask a completely different question. If LGR does not go forward, and there are no elections in April 2027, does the Shadow Town Council, the Town Council elections still take place? And if it does so, as we've been told in parishes, if we have our elections in 2028, not 2027, we are paying for them ourselves as parishes. Who is paying for the Town Council election?
Thank you. The officers will give you a view.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. So yes, the Town Council elections will still go ahead as planned in 2027, and the cost will be borne by the Town Council. If there aren't other elections it can be combined with.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the original proposal? Okay, we'll move to the vote. Can all members indicate if they are for? Thank you, members. All against? And abstentions, please. So that was carried, members. 26 for, 4 against, and 10 abstentions. Thank you. Thank you, members. We'll move on to agenda item 15. I call upon the Director of Strategy, Insight and Governance to submit the report on the review of allocation of seats on committees. Recommendations are on page 9.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I commend the report to Council.
So I'm looking for a proposer. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the allocation of seats on committees be as set out in Appendix 1 to the report of the Director of Strategy and Insight and Governance, and that the wishes of the group leaders with regard to appointments to committees as set out in schedule circulated as Appendix 2 be accepted.
Is that seconded? Councillor English, would you like to speak now or would you like to reserve your right?
There's no need to speak on this technical report.
Okay, members, is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Members, is that agreed? Thank you, members. And thank you to everyone this evening about the discussion of the Town Council. I think there was a little bit of a difference in opinion, but I like to see the fact that we all seem to want to move forward for the town and for the benefit of our residents. I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you, members.